Colorado Avalanche just reassigned Cal Ritchie back to juniors. Let me show you why that's the right decision. Okay, for starters, I don't want to dunk on Cal Ritchie here. This is not a knock on him as a player. He did a lot of good things in the NHL. He's just a 19-year-old, and he will be a good NHLer one day. The reality is he's just not there yet. The biggest reason Ritchie is getting sent back to his junior team is the fact that he's just not reading the ice at NHL speed just yet. This is normal. It happens to the vast majority of players when they first step into the NHL. The speed is overwhelming, and it takes a significant amount of time to adjust. Ritchie, particularly on the defensive side of the ice or breaking out of his own zone, is just not making the plays that you have to be able to make at NHL speed. Making some of those mistakes and losing trust in his own ability to see the game at that speed then leads to a bigger problem. To be honest, at times in both zones, Cal Ritchie just looks lost in this NHL game. And part of that is he's not fully adapted to the Avalanche systems, but it's also that he just doesn't seem to be able to keep up right now. Ritchie is not the fastest skater in the world, and to be a successful hockey player, he's going to have to rely on his ability to read and see the game. And don't get me wrong, I think he understands how and what has to be done at times on the ice. It's just not coming automatically. It's not coming fast enough. You don't have time in the NHL to think about your decisions and make them at your own leisure. You have to know what you're doing before you get the puck, and you have to make that decision or really execute that decision without even really thinking about it. This leads me to another part of the problem for Ritchie. Look, long-term, Ritchie probably projects as a skill player in the NHL. But right now, for him to help the Avalanche, it's not really the skill that they need. They need a guy who can go in there, grind it out, and work hard. Far too often in this 7-game stretch, Ritchie just is not quite engaged enough physically, whether it's on a forecheck or back check, whether it's engaging in a puck battle along the wall. You see a lot of reaching, a lot of stick work, a lot of poking, not a lot of using his body to physically get in there. And part of that, he's not fully physically mature. Part of that is he's not a natural winger. He's played center his whole life. So maybe the Avs aren't doing the best job of setting him up for success. But that's the reality of the season for the Avs in the NHL this year. They have to use who can be most effective and what works in the moment. The Avs' job this season is not to teach Ritchie how to play NHL hockey. The Avs' objective is to win as many games as possible and try to win a Stanley Cup. Ritchie needed to figure out a way to be a part of that as is with whatever the Avs asked them to do, and it just didn't quite click. Statistically is where things start to get really glaring. Ritchie is the worst plus-minus on the team at a -7. And despite averaging over 12.5 minutes a night so far, he's only managed to produce the 1 goal for the Avs. Again, if he was doing the grinder things right, it wouldn't be that big of a deal that the production wasn't there. But the style of player that Ritchie is, those points need to be present. And to make matters worse, Ritchie is the worst possession player on the Colorado Avalanche so far this year, and it's not particularly close. Only 2 players on the Avs are on the wrong side of Corsi for percentage, Miles Wood and Cal Ritchie, and Wood is at least close to that 50% mark. Cal Ritchie is operating with a Corsi percentage of just 42%. He's getting caved in on nearly every shift, and no matter who his line mates are at any given time, they seem to have their possession numbers go in the wrong direction. Ritchie is dragging down other players at this point with his play at the NHL level. The reality of the situation is Ritchie is not ready for the NHL, and the Avs are not in a position to give him time to figure it out at that NHL level. In a perfect world, the AHL would be the perfect league for Cal Ritchie to go learn at the pro level while working on his details on the defensive side particularly. Unfortunately, the rules do not allow that. Ritchie is not yet 20 years old, so he either has to play in the NHL or go back to juniors. And juniors was the correct option. While it's not my favorite thing, the details that Ritchie needs to work on, most of them can be done at the junior level. He has to devote himself to it and take responsibility to be more responsible defensively at that level, to understand the type of plays he needs to be making at the NHL level, whether that's faster and more efficient breakouts, whether that's being more physical along the wall, whether that's taking a better job of marking your man defensively, or simply just consistency from shift to shift. Ritchie can do all of those things himself regardless of the league that he's in, and ultimately, for the Avs to try and win this year, Ritchie leaving is the best option.